What's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about Black Panther, the MCU film from Ryan Coogler. It plays with some very deep ideas about what it means to be a hero and what it means to be a villain. It's a really good place to kick off that conversation. Coogler's film is nuanced, it's deep, and it has one of the best villains in the MCU in Eric Killmonger. Then this week we saw TV personality Nick Cannon get fired from his job, from one of his jobs. He actually kept his other job. Amid some calling for him to get canceled, there was a lot of defending him and non-defending him. So on today's show, we're mostly going to dig into the story of Black Panther by asking, what is Black Panther telling us is true about the world and how we should behave? But then we're also going to ask the question, did Nick Cannon actually go full Killmonger? So what's up, storytellers? My name is Jay Sherer. You guys know me, hopefully. I am the author of the Amazon top-selling time travel novel, Time Slingers, co-writer, director, co-producer of the full cast audiobook of Death of a Bounty Hunter, back here on the wall behind me. By the way, the Kindle editions of both those things, both Time Slingers and the Kindle edition of Death of a Bounty Hunter, on sale for 99 cents right now on Amazon. So go check that out. On this channel, we talk about the process of writing and producing science fiction and fantasy stories. I talk about what I've done in the past, but also how those stories impact our culture, just kind of like we do over at the Story Geeks YouTube channel as well. But I thought it would be a good time to talk about this specific issue, as it has been a big conversation in the world today. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and check out more of our videos. But right for now, let's talk about the story behind the MCU's Black Panther. And I'm very excited because one of our biggest supporters on Patreon for the longest period of time, and one of my personal friends, Montrell Thigpen, is joining me today. Monty, how are you, sir? Oh, he's muted.
I'm doing all right. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Monty and I had a really good conversation. I would say it was a text conversation, except for it was more like writing letters back to each other.
It really was. And it was in 3 parts. Each text was in 3 parts.
It was good, and we were breaking down just basically what's going on in the world, how this stuff is playing itself out, and then I was thinking, I'm trying to do my live shows on Fridays to be sort of culturally relevant to some kind of topic that's come out. So I did one on Hamilton. I did one on the Splash Mountain redesign, the retheming of Splash Mountain. And so when Monty and I had such a good conversation about this, I was like, dude, you want to go talk about this on Friday, like in a slightly different way? And of course you're here. So why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
My name is Montrell. I'm married to the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name is Kelsey. I'm a Christian, some type of Christian, some form of Southern Baptist, Pentecostal, California, non-denominational, whatever you want to go with. I believe in the Bible, and I think that's the most important thing.
Nice. I like that intro. Monty's actually, Montrell is actually super intelligent as well, and has been doing a bunch of tech stuff. How many companies have you technically started? How many ideas have you technically started at this point?
Shucks. Of the ones that actually went basically somewhere,
yeah,
I'd say maybe three or four.
Yeah, but of the ones you had actually really good ideas for, probably like 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was had $1 million offer. You might have remembered.
I do remember.
There was talks about an acqui-hire with a certain company up in San Fran.
That's right.
But you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. That's very true. All right, so the reason this came up in my mind was that Nick Cannon recently did a podcast where he was talking to Griff back in the Public Enemy days. You might know Griff from that. Griff has gone on to be sort of a Jordan Boudreau is in the chat. How about that?
Hey, man.
What's up, Jordan? So Griff has gone on to be sort of a what would you call him? Just sort of a thought leader, maybe you'd call it.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, he's a guy who's been in the game,
yeah,
and has seen how the game works, right? So he's here. I think that he likes to inform people about the game,
yeah,
the music game, the business game. I think that's what his biggest thing is about.
Yeah. And they had this conversation in which they talked about, and this is what Monty and I were texting back and forth about, and writing to each other about a lot of actual things that should be considered by people in terms of the history of the Black community, especially in America. But then they also started to talk about some things that were quickly labeled as anti-Semitic, and it kind of got out of control. And then pretty soon, Nick Cannon found himself out of a job with Viacom CBS. Apparently, he still has his job with, I guess it's Fox that has The Masked Singer.
Yeah, Fox and
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Nick Cannon, but I was thinking about this from the context of like fantasy and sci-fi stories, and it occurred to me that like nowhere is there a story better suited for what our vision or what our thought process should look like in terms of moving forward. I mean, I'm just sure there's probably something better, but in my mind, what I've seen is Black Panther, because Black Panther is so good. So the goal for today is really that we assess what Black Panther is saying and determine whether, like, what's the ideal that we should be striving for. And then I want to determine about how do we take that ideal and apply it to the real world when it comes to either holding people accountable, like what should happen to Nick Cannon, or the kind of conversations that we should be having. So my first question for you, Monty, is who do you think the main characters are in Black Panther, and what are their different viewpoints, and ultimately what are their goals and objectives when the film starts?
Okay. Well, I'll start off with the obvious. Obviously, T'Challa, Black Panther, right? That's pretty self-evident. I mean, he's got the title of the film and everything. And of course, Killmonger, I would say probably his main adversary. But I want to talk about an unspoken character that we really don't see in Marvel films anymore, that we used to see in like a lot of the old Spider-Man trilogies with Tobey Maguire. And that's the character of the world. In the old Spider-Man movies, you know, part of being Spider-Man was about saving New York. And every villain that Tobey Maguire fought against, somewhere out of some place, New Yorkers would come out and start throwing stones at the bad guy. Spider-Man 2, you had the train scene, you know, and then they catch him from falling, and then they stand in the way of Doc Ock. And so I think in Black Panther, a lot of things that we don't really talk about is why Black Panther, T'Challa, and Wakanda are where they are, and then why Killmonger is trying to invade Wakanda. And it's because Wakanda is trying to protect itself from the outside world, and then Killmonger is trying to save the outside world with Wakanda's technology. And so, like, when we talk about main characters, I think it also goes back to the environment, the context of these characters. I think might even play a bigger role in than just the main two characters that we see in the titles card.
Yeah, I think that's really true. In fact, I had two of the same characters that you had. I think bringing the world into it at large is a really good pickup, because I think that you've got T'Challa, and T'Challa at the beginning of the film is more focused on self-preservation of Wakanda than he is about helping anybody outside of Wakanda, right? He's just basically like, I want to protect what Wakanda has. And we kind of see why that is, because Andy Serkis's character Claw wants to rob Wakanda of its resources. That's like the first opening sequence that we're kind of dealing with. And I think that Claw is not a main character, but he is also, I think, a sub-assembly of the world, because he is Western civilization. Claw basically acts like Western civilization in many regards, right? And what I mean by that is you have this idea that Western civilization is moving into Wakanda to take Wakanda's resources from them, and they're fighting back against that. So I think that's really, really interesting to me. I think it relates to the Nick Cannon conversation as well when we get there. I think Killmonger's the other one, right? Killmonger is his character doesn't actually develop that much. He accomplishes things, but he has the same goal in the beginning and the same goal in the end, and that's that he basically wants to rule Wakanda, and he wants to do so that he can help oppressed people groups rise up all over the world against their oppressors. Now, it could be argued, and I'd have to watch the film again. I've already seen it several times, but I'd have to watch the film again. But you get the intent that Killmonger doesn't just want to free people from their oppressors, but that he wants to actually then become an oppressor. like he wants to use his power to then over. And you can kind of see why he would want to do that based on his background and based off what Claw's doing, right? So like it kind of makes sense in those. The last one, though, the last character whose viewpoint I think we would call what the theme of the whole movie is about is Nakia's. And Nakia's viewpoint is essentially that we should not be hiding our resources. We should not be self-preserving. We should be out there helping oppressed peoples, not so that we become the oppressor, but so that they're able to better themselves in life and that we can help fight back against some of the evils that are out there. Would you say that that's, in addition to what you talked about, are those accurate?
If you watch the end of the movie, right? When T'Challa and his sister, what's his? I forgot his sister, Shuri. I think it's his sister.
Shuri. Yeah.
And they both go back to Oakland. Shuri says, "I thought we were going to go to Disney World or Coachella, not to go see some buildings get torn down." Right.
Right.
And T'Challa says, "I don't want to tear down these buildings. I want to keep them. So I bought this one. I bought the other one, kind of like a Bruce Wayne kind of move, right?
Right.
And he's going to help turn them into rehabilitation centers." So I think the difference is Killmonger not only wanted to tear down systems of oppression, but he also wanted to basically eradicate anybody who leaned that way. Right. Whereas T'Challa and Nakia and Shuri, they all found out that we don't have to take people's culture away. We don't have to take their land. We don't have to take who they are as people. We just need to give them more tools to help them become better people.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is a very almost anti-colony, because colonialism was all about, we're going to give you our values. We're going to give you the way that we think, the way that we want to run things.
Right.
And that's not always the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the film plays out, and you and I both mentioned this already in what we've talked about, but as the film plays out, like, what are the big takeaways that you take with you to say, like, these characters changed, they changed in really important ways? You just talked about a really powerful scene that talked about a perspective of the world that we could have. What is the takeaway in your mind about what this film is telling us that how we should engage with the world?
This film, in my opinion, is telling us that the thing that makes us who we are, our cultures, are not something that we're supposed to keep to ourselves and keep away from other people. It's something that we're supposed to share with each other to make us better people. Like, you can say that, Wakanda's the best. Sure, maybe, right? You could say that America's the best. You could say that where are they at? Korea's the best, right? But unless we're willing to take the best of ourselves and bring them together, we're always going to be better or lesser than somebody else. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that this movie really tells us, that it's not about my dreads being a black dreads thing. It's about people appreciating what dreads mean, what they represent, who they're for, and accepting that,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's very true. I think too, like, what's interesting to me is that the film doesn't really showcase. A lot of people after this film was over were like, is Killmonger really a villain? And it doesn't show him as like an abhorrent person. You can kind of understand why he's doing what he's doing because you empathize and sympathize with him. Like, it shows what it looks like to be his character and how you might feel if you were his character. And that's why he's one of the best villains in the MCU, because they made him so empathetic. I think the biggest takeaway too for me as I watch this is that Nakia is actually trying to bring about a world where the people of Wakanda behave as if they love others as much as they love themselves. Right? Like, I was thinking about this the other day. and you'll like this, I think. But I was thinking about this because I was doing a Bible study, and I'm looking through the Bible, and I realized that when the Bible talks about the golden rule, it's a very different statement than the golden rule is, because the golden rule is like do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the Bible actually talks about it, it's love your neighbors, and we know that neighbors are defined as everybody based on the Good Samaritan parable, right? Mm-hmm. Love your neighbors as you love yourself. And so it's not like, well, you know, I like Nakia is saying, we have a bunch of cool stuff, but it's not about, we're strong enough, we're powerful enough that we could give up some of this stuff and love other people the way that we're loving on ourselves. And that's like, to have that in an MCU film as being like the thing that we should do is like extraordinary. It's perhaps one of the best messages, if not the best message in the entire MCU, which I think is just phenomenal. So given the ending of this film and given the change in these characters, you know, what is it saying? What are we supposed to, we've talked about it already a lot, but like, how are we supposed to behave? Like, how should Black Panther as a film shape us as moviegoers who are trying to interact with our communities?
Yeah. To answer that question better, I'll talk about like the death of Killmonger, right? To answer that question better, I think we also have to look at the film Thor Ragnarok 3, right? And it's a huge allegory for the repercussions of bloody colonialism. Mm-hmm. It's a huge allegory for that. And Hela even states in the movie, she's like, how do you think Dad got all this gold? How do you think we became benevolent? How do you think we became who we are, Asgard, the center of the 9 realms, right? I think that because Asgard never reconciled with their past and who they were, and then even gave back beyond just being the great protector, right? It came back to bite them. And Hela, who is like the epitome of conquering, the epitome of going out and taking what you want, the epitome of seeing those beneath you and destroying them, she never died. She was just locked up a little bit. And then when all that came out, you saw, I mean, Asgard disappeared. They had to destroy Asgard to save it, right? And so I think when we look at Killmonger, we see a character who never let go of history. Not necessarily forgot about it, but kind of let it go. And then we see a character also who is the product of that history. And not history of like white people being mean to black people. Not that. That wasn't even it. He is a product, a literal product of what today we would call black on black crime. He is a product of 2 brothers who had differences and made very poor decisions, both of them. Sure, should Najobu, I think it was his name, Killmonger's dad, should he have stolen from Wakanda and gave stuff to Claw? No. Should he have even tried to kill his brother, Uncle James? Should he have tried to kill Uncle James? No. But at the same time, should King Chikaka, should he have killed his brother? Is a man who's the king of basically Africa unable to stop somebody from shooting somebody else without killing them? You know, like you think about it, and then he also just abandoned Killmonger. Right? So I think Killmonger, the ending of that movie, you see a character like T'Challa who has understood that we have to face our past and be better than our past. And you see Killmonger, somebody who doesn't want to let the past go and wants to use the past to not just move to the future, but shape it in a negative way. And he died trying to do it.
Right.
And he didn't die. Let's remember this. He didn't die. Killmonger killed himself.
Right.
Because they could have saved him.
Right. That's right.
Killmonger chose death. What's that mean? You have chosen death. That's what Killmonger did.
And that's why he was so passionate about what he was doing. So Do you think, and I apologize because I didn't give you this question in advance, but as we're talking about this, I think this is a really important question too. Is there anything about the film that you think the film gets wrong? Is there anything about the film that you're like, I feel like the film doesn't really accurately look at this issue in the right way?
Yeah. I was kind of thinking you would ask me this question. There's an old movie. I'm gonna say old because I'm 25, but my parents may be upset. I can't even remember the name of this movie, but essentially it's two prisoners. Okay. It's two prisoners, and one of them's black, one of them's white. I cannot remember the name of this movie, but I think it won an Oscar.
Are you gonna say Shawshank Redemption?
Is that the name of the movie?
It might be. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. But at the end of not at the end, but at one of the climaxes of the film, they're trying to catch the train. Yeah. This is probably Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. They're trying to catch the train, and if you watch modern day documentaries about people reacting to the film, all the black people are like, "Catch the train, go get on the train," and then they're like, "Don't go back for him. Why would you go back for him? You can be free, right?" And then you have a lot of the white people like, see, he was sacrificial. He came back for us, and he didn't just let us fall on our own butts, even though we were mean, right? There's a take about this film that says that this film was created to teach blacks that they can't leave behind white people, and that they're supposed to stay and be the slave for white people. That's like one of the critical takes, right?
Right.
And so obviously that's not true. We shouldn't be a slave to one another. We should sacrifice one another, but we shouldn't be a slave to one another. But when I take that kind of like context for that movie, right? And especially in the time that it came out, right? We finally get a black man on screen, and instead of being the hero, he sacrifices himself and his freedom, right? So when I look at Black Panther, and in the context of its world and where we are today, one of the things that I have wrong, that I find kind of wrong with it, is the idea that in order for blacks to be superior, they have to have been from the motherland and cut off from the rest of the world. Because it does not show you at any point in this film a middle ground. Right. It doesn't. It shows that either black kids are poor and they live in Oakland,
right,
or they're rich and they lived in Africa for millennia without the outside world.
Right.
And something that I would have liked to see, especially in the MCU that has such a huge customer base, is to see people in the middle, in the middle ground.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm like, all right, I'm not a poor kid in Oakland.
Right.
I've been to Oakland once, but I'm not a refugee of some African civil war.
Right.
I'm definitely not from Wakanda. It's a made up place. Right? Right. So I'm like, where am I in this film?
Right. So if they had made a role for somebody like Falcon and put Falcon in it, like that could have shown another perspective, basically.
It could have. I think because we talked about this a little bit earlier. In movies, black people are what? They're thugs or thieves. They're slaves or Africans wearing booty shorts or something. They're the token black family in an all-white neighborhood, and they have to deal with that, right? Or they're just, or they're mythical, like they're not even real. They're Hancock, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I would have liked to see, especially from Ryan Coogler and his entire awesome staff, is normal black people.
Yeah.
70% of black people are not poor. They're doing fine. They have degrees. They have families. They're not just single parent moms. They're not just single parent dads. They're normal. Just like everybody else. So that's something
that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think that as a writer and knowing like how storytelling goes, it is often difficult to bring in all of the different perspectives you could. But I think it's a really good call out, because at the same time, it's like, well, there's an important perspective that guides this particular topic that is just not even there. It's like it's absent from the entire film. But I would say that your breakdown is great. I think that a lot of the things in this film are really, really strong. I think the fact that Captain America: Civil War is a lead up to this film is really important because the character of T'Challa, in his quest to have revenge on Zemo in Captain America: Civil War, he discovers through that process what it looks like for two people, Tony and Cap, to start to deconstruct one another based on their strongly held belief systems, right? And how damaging that is to the Avengers. Fast forward to the end of Black Panther, where he's up in front of everybody saying, like, Wakanda is going to actively work for a better future, and so we're going to be more generous with our technology. We're going to take a stance of power because we have power, and it is up to us to help other people across the world. And we're not going to do what Killmonger was suggesting we do, and that is oppress other people. But we are also going to be strong in our position so that we do not become oppressed. That's really cool. I mean, that's like. I think that if you were to ask me right now, like, who's the best possible leader of the Avengers moving forward, I'd be like, dude, T'Challa. Like, it's like hands down, he has the best perspective. He has a better perspective than Cap or Tony had, honestly, in many regards, because Cap sacrificed the Cap was starting to sacrifice the whole for Bucky, and Tony was sacrificing his anonymity and the freedom of the Avengers to move without government interference and government perspectives. And Tony was giving that up. So I think T'Challa is actually the best leader of the Avengers moving forward after the end of Black Panther. So I think it's a great film. But now to take that film, now this is going to get into the only reason I bring this up as a topic is because as we look at our culture right now, we look at Twitter right now, we look at the podcast, which you and I both listened to the entire podcast that Nick Cannon was on. And we both realized it was much more nuanced than a lot of it was reported as being said, although he did say some things that I think both of us would be like, well, yeah. So if we take this all into account, how do we apply this thinking to the real world where there's real problems and there's people like you and me who are going like, well, let's have a conversation about this over the course of the day because there's a lot to unpack here. So how do we start to think about this? Like, what do we do with Nick Cannon? He's being called out for his beliefs. What do we do with that? And how do we apply the message of Black Panther? Is it applicable to this situation? Is it not applicable to the situation? Like, where do we find ourselves in this? What do you think?
What's interesting is a little bit ago we talked about how Iron Man was willing to sacrifice his identity, so that the government, they signed the accords, right? And Cap was like, "Nah, I've seen what governments do. This is bad." When we look at Nick Cannon and we look at his statements, what he said. Of course, first of all, they were taken out of context, but we can get into that later. Not that they were good or bad, but they were definitely taken out of context. But let's look at like the difference between hate speech and hate crime, right? Because there's a weird area where there isn't such thing as verbal assault. Like that's a real thing, right?
Right.
So when you talk about hate speech, you talk about hate crimes, one of them is punishable by the government. The other one is punishable by the society. And so Nick Cannon losing his job, or one of his millions of jobs actually, due to, I think, people taking his words to heart and being offended by them and being hurt by them, and Viacom saying we don't like this kind of message or this kind of person in our brand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, how the whole cancel culture thing. But then you look at the other side to where legally he is protected. Because it wasn't a hate crime. It wasn't dictated as verbal assault. So even though it's like it's out of context a little bit, should he have legally been fired from Viacom? I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Right. right.
Because the government says you can't discriminate somebody. You can't violate free speech, right? But that's the government's role. The government can't oppress free speech.
Right.
Doesn't say anything about private companies. So like it's weird. I don't know. It's like the mask thing, right? Like of course the government's like we're not going to tell you to wear masks because whatever, we're the government, right?
Yeah, but wear your mask.
The businesses are like, no, you're going to follow this dress code. People don't like that, so they start destroying stores.
Right.
So like it's a weird gray area. I don't think I wouldn't want to continue being friends with somebody who made those kind of statements. Like just out of the blue. Like if you know that for a fact that they're just racist statements and they just say what they say. No, I wouldn't want to be around that person. I wouldn't want to have them in my company or whatever. But at the same time, if I'm in the White House and I say that, that's okay. We have presidents from the beginning to now who have said horrible things, like just straight horrible things.
Right.
But that's just the law of the land kind of thing.
So let's get a little bit deeper into a couple of the things that he said, because one of the things that they spend a lot of the first part of their podcast talking about, again, this is Nick Cannon and Griff, is that they talk a lot about what Western civilization has looked like in the eyes of the Black community. And when I use that phrase, I'm not assuming that every single person in the Black community is going to agree. Like I'm just saying that's what their context, what they were talking about.
Right.
I thought that was really fascinating as it related to the movie, because as I heard them talking about it, I was essentially looking at that and going like, yeah, I mean, they're basically talking about Claw from Black Panther. Like, he's been an oppressor in the past because he's stolen stuff, tried to steal stuff from Wakanda or stolen stuff from Wakanda. He's an oppressor in the present. And we actually even see what Killmonger is willing to do, because Killmonger kills the oppressor. So like you get like quite a bit of like intensity there with this playing out of what Western civilization looks like to the Wakandans in this case, and what it also looks like to Killmonger, because Killmonger is using Claw the whole time, even though Claw doesn't know it. And I think that those things have really been true. And in our conversation, you and I were talking about that. Like in the beginning of their conversation, they're saying a lot of things that I think could be perceived as really harsh, but also, like you and I talked about, some of those things are just facts. Like you could just open up like a how did history play itself out, and you can just read through those things. So was there anything in there that you felt like was worthy of being brought up in this conversation about storytelling and Black Panther that
I think one of the biggest things that we forget today about history is that modern human civilization is very young. Like it's really young. And we treat it like it's this million-year-long thing, and it's just like, like God is like billions and billions and billions of years ago. Like we treat it like it's not. It's about a good 5,000, maybe even 4,000 years of like real modern civilization, right? And then so when you bring it back, right? Because like we talk about slavery all the time. Slavery is 400 years ago. No, slavery started 400 years ago. It's not, but it lasted another 400 years. So like it's very, very different. So when we talk about like ancient Egypt, right? And
which they do a lot of. They talk a lot about ancient Egypt. Yeah.
And they talk a lot about how the black people are the true Hebrews. I don't even know what a true Hebrew is. And they talk about how white people were in the mountains of Caucasus and all this stuff, right? But what they talk about is the difference between a people group who is left alone and another people group who were left alone. And then they've decided that each of them have good ideas. And for a good long while, Egypt was the center of that area. Yeah. Egypt was the hub. It was the knowledge hub. It was where math was invented. Like you had all the Middle Eastern stuff. And ancient railroads. Like Rome was a huge area. Like that Egypt, Middle Eastern, East Asia, or West Asia, and East European, like that whole area right there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, the convergence of 3 continents, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what happened was somebody needed to be on top. We got complacent. Humans don't like each other. It's just how it works. Sometimes we don't like other people because they're different. Their skin color is different. Their body type is different. Some of them are female, some of them are male. We just have weird reasons not to like each other, right? And so there has to be ways to kind of undermine things, right? So a few days ago, I went into this little rhetoric on Twitter about the difference between a conqueror and a bully. And I think that a lot of times today we view a lot of civilizations as conquerors. But a lot of them, I would say probably most of like the big players were bullies. Because a conqueror has to beat the person on top to become the top. Like that's how that works. But a bully doesn't have to do that. A bully can stay exactly where they are, but they have to push the person that's low even lower.
Sure. It's like punching down instead of punching up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think when you talk about blacks, like in America, right? We always talk about the motherland, right? We don't always talk about the motherland, but we say the motherland. We talk about Africa, right? But usually when we talk about Africa, we say Egypt. Why? Because for all we know throughout history is Egypt is where all the people were. Egypt is who we were, right? And then we're taught when we were slaves, we read the book of Exodus and we're like, oh man, the Hebrews, that's us, that's our people. Like they're from Africa. They're the Canaanites. We're black. They're black. We're the same people. They were kind of different black, but it's the same. And so when we talk about like things like with Nick Cannon and Griff, just to circle back, they mentioned things about being the true Hebrew and having melanin and all this other stuff. And something that I've learned from being in an interracial marriage and how interracial children works is skin color does not work the same way as recessive traits and higher traits. Like it doesn't work the same way. There are like these kind of like slots that are for skin, and I think it's 6 skin types or something like that, but they all get passed down, and all of those can be represented. So like if you look at an interracial family, like you could just search it, you can have an all white kid, you can have an all black kid, you can have some kids that are in the middle, you can have some kids that are kind of darker, you have some kids that are like really, really white. And that's just how skin color works, because it's not exactly like dominant versus recessive or anything like that. It's just that's the magic of it. So when Nick talks about like non-melanin versus melanin and talks about how today we have this animosity between the non-melanin evil and the melanin good, the context of that conversation, or that not the conversation, but the context of those comments were centered around the idea that we've created boogeyman or boogeymen that gets their power or whatever from white supremacy. So he straight up says, he's like, look, he's like the boogeyman, the Illuminati, F them. He's like, I've been to Jay-Z's house.
Yeah, right.
They didn't do no crazy rituals over there. He's not an Illuminati. The Illuminati's fake. It's a boogeyman. He's like the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, all these people that we've seen in high places, right? We create them as boogeyman or some kind of secret society. But he's like, no, what it boils down to really is we have some people who wanted to undermine other people, other civilizations. And of course, he said some far off stuff, like they didn't have sons, so they were angry. Maybe or maybe not. That's a thing. I don't know. I've been locked inside a lockdown, so I want to go outside. I'm a little upset. But obviously, I have more melanin than anybody on the screen right now. But he said that there were some white supremacists, and not white supremacy. Back then, it wasn't white supremacy like we have to exist, we have to live, we have to survive. It wasn't even that. It was like they have something that we want, and we needed to make ourselves better. Right. And because of that, it kind of undermines. And so I think probably like midways through, Griff says that If somebody comes to you and they take the very thing that makes you who you are,
Mm.
and then they undermine you and they take it and they make themselves better and starts feeding you things that actually hurt you,
Right.
what do you think will happen?
Right.
And so, you know,
Killmonger. I mean, basically, right?
Exactly. Like
right.
that's literally what happens is you've taken everything that makes Killmonger who he is, his dad, his relationship with his dad, right? His friends. He doesn't have a provider anymore. Now he's on his own. He was having fun with friends, and now he's nothing.
Right.
And they took that, and then of course, what do? They put him in the system.
You're right.
And the system it sucks. It's horrible, right? It's so horrible that we have to choose between abortion or putting kids in the system. Like that's how bad the system is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we with Killmonger, he grows up and all he's filled with is the absence of who he actually was.
Mm.
And so when Nick and Griff talk about it, and they're like, you look at America, you look at modern day like descendants from slaves, both in South America, where most of them went, because it's sugar, because sugar is legit.
And he did say that too. He did say most of them went there. So yeah, he had that. Again, facts, right?
It's just facts, right?
Yeah.
But I think where he gets in trouble is almost where a lot of Christians get in trouble, even today. We come up with myths or legends as to why we end up where we are. Right? So for instance, let's just bring it back just a little bit. 1960s, my parents, they're born. They grew up, they go to high school in the 1980s. My mom in Chicago, my dad somewhere in Arkansas. They grow up and they're taught that Africans are inferior. Not just genetically, but they're also taught that the color black means evil. And you have to wash it white as snow. Even though Jesus' blood was red, but whatever. So when you get indoctrinated with these kind of things, you start to forget who you really are, right? And then in Christianity, we believe that we're children of God.
Right.
Right. And then we always say, like, when you sin, you're falling away from God and all this other godly goop. That's not really how it works.
Right. Right.
He even said, he's like, it stinks in my nose, but what you have to do is be born again. Right. And so we get so caught up in these like weird rituals, like we have to pay the priest to talk to him. We're not supposed to read the Bible. We have to get it read to us. Right. But no, we're supposed to have a real relationship with God, not just all these weird mysticisms and like weird ideologies that we have today. So I think that's where Nick got messed up, was like he's like, okay, so there are black people, Asian people, whatever, and we're all dark skinned, and all of a sudden these white people are in power today. So obviously the white people are in power because they came and they took away everything from black people and then just enslaved them. I'm like, there is some truth to that, but not everything is racial. But a lot of things are systemic, from different colors treating different people badly.
Yeah, I think all of what you said is awesome, and I think that there's a moment in the conversation near the end when you get the impression that what Nick meant earlier in the conversation is not that they should ever become full Killmonger and become oppressors.
Yep.
But if you backtrack to the previous part of the conversation, without that last minute part of I mean, these are like a half an hour apart in the recording.
Yeah.
If you go back to when he's talking about melanated people, right? And he's like, what he seems to indicate, and this is where I think a lot of the outrage came from, because they just like clipped that little segment of him talking about this without the end segment. And I think that what he was trying to say was, we have, because this is where they talk about being gods too, and I want to talk about that with you a little bit. But they talk about, he's talking about the fact that his perception of his community, because I don't want to speak on behalf of that, but his perception of his community is that they have undervalued themselves. And like just like you just said, that this was taught to your parents to undervalue themselves, right? To see themselves in a different way. And so what he's kind of doing is he's like reframing how you could view yourself. Unfortunately, when he does that reframing, he, instead of saying there are villains amongst us who are looking out only for themselves, what he seemed to indicate was there are villains and they all look a certain way because they don't have any melanin in their skin. That's what he made it sound like.
Yeah.
I don't think that he meant that. I think he meant to say there were he was trying to communicate what happened historically, and he was trying to say there was a portion that a bunch of other people went along with in taking over the black people in that area. But the way he said it, he made it sound like if you don't have melanin in your skin, you are automatically evil, is what he made it sound like. I don't think that's necessarily what he meant, but it's what he made it sound like. And that was the most problematic part of his conversation. But then later on, I do think he redeemed it a little bit because he brought it back to like, I'm not trying to oppress anybody else. I'm just trying to lift my community.
Right before he even says that, he's like, this is going to sound controversial because he knows, but he's Nick Cannon. So like, he's only ever going to think in the way that a comedian thinks. And so the way funny people think, because they're so smart, the way they think is that they understand what they're saying and other people will too.
Right.
And because I'm a comedian, they should find it funny.
Yeah.
That's how comedians think. They're some of the most intelligent people in the world. Right. That's just how they think. And so Dave
Chappelle is like one of the most intelligent people on the face of the planet.
That man is smart. And so I think I'm not going to say that there's some evil people out there, but I do think that somebody watched this entire podcast, and got to the part, they probably zoned out, and they got to the part where Nick's like, these white people from the mountains of Caucasus came down, and now they're trying to kill out all the black people. I think they got to that part, and something triggered, because when I hear black people, my mind wakes up because right. And they trimmed it out of context, put it up on the internet, and then humans, because that's how we are, we don't look at context of anything. We just kind of look at it as face value and go with it. Yeah. It blew out of proportion.
Yeah.
And I think.
Go ahead.
And I think just real quick, I think that a lot of it also comes from bad teaching. Just like my parents were indoctrinated that white people are superior genetically. I still don't know why this is a real thing, but I still have this weird thing in the back of my head that I was taught when I was little, that black people have a third muscle leg. I don't know if that's true. And I am married to somebody who's in school to be a nurse practitioner. And I do not know if that is true or not. But because of like these bad teachings, I think even Nick talked about with Farrakhan, with some of the old mythos of black guys wearing dresses. There's a lot of bad teachings that perpetuate a lot of these mythos that we have that makes up who we are.
So I got two last questions for you, because I want to know. I think so. Just to close that portion of the topic, I think that if Nick could say over again what he was saying in that moment and make it clearer what he was trying to point out. But again, he is a celebrity. He's not necessarily a thinker. He's not a philosopher, or I'm not saying he can't be. I'm not saying you can't be a philosopher if you're a celebrity. What I am saying is he's trying to host a podcast and make it interesting. So I think if he could say it over again, based on what he says later in the show, I think he could have said it better. And they would have. It could have been more understandable to people and not been clipped out. So I want to get to what we're going to do about Nick, or the Nicks of the world, who are speaking out about a topic where a lot of people are like, wait a minute, what are you saying? Right. But before we get there, I do want to touch on the conversation they had about gods, because that was really, really interesting to me. So what was your take on that?
So I don't, I don't think that we are gods. I do know that we are of God, right? He breathed his breath into us, right? We are made in his image. When we took a bite of that apple, Satan didn't lie. We became like God because we understood the difference between right and wrong, right?
Right. The birth of morality, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that and Griff even said it. He's like, we're gods like little G's.
Yes.
He's not saying that we are God, because that's different. That's a higher power. He's saying that we are children of God. Right? So it's kind of like saying, I'm black. I'm black, sure, but technically I'm descendants of blacks. So I would really be more accurate to say I'm of the black ethnicity. That's, if we want to talk about accuracy, that's the best way to say it. It's like we say we're children of God, not that we're gods, right? So I think that is what they were saying and what they are saying. But of course, because we're Christians and there is no God but God, right? That's how our country is set up. We're definitely going to take a huge offense to that. And I think the Mormons get a lot of flack for that today because they believe they're gonna become God and then they're gonna go on different planets and have their own children. Don't know how that works. But Jesus, all I'm saying is Jesus didn't come here through sex, so I don't know how they're making babies if they're married. God just kind of spoke that one.
Well, okay, so I think you're right about that. I think too, like I think that using that terminology is. I think there's two aspects to it because I'm assuming that terminology is more prevalent among those of the Islamic faith. Would you agree?
Yeah, and they talked about that as well. They talked right around that. It was about the descendants of Abraham, and we have the Hebrews, and then we have the Islam through Ishmael, right? And then that's where they were talking about it.
They were talking about that a little bit in there. And so I think that using the small g, like Charlemagne, right? Like Charlemagne calls himself Charlemagne the God. There's always a rap god reference, right? Like these are like terminology that is being used. And I feel like that is mostly a response to what you talked about with your parents in terms of what they were being taught. And it's more of a reframing to say, no, don't put yourself down. Like lift yourself up and look at yourself in a different light. Look at yourself not. Yeah, exactly. And so obviously I think people like you and I who are Christ followers would say that we identify with Christ, but we would not use that term because, like you're saying, children of God is a different connotation to us than is saying God, even if it's lowercase g. Yeah. And I think you said
that a little bit.
They did talk about that a little bit. They talked about that a little bit. Yeah, he did. Yeah, you're right. They did talk about that a little bit. And I think too, like part of the issue, I thought about this in the context of I did a video on whether or not we should take down Confederate statues. You can go back and watch that. It's the last video I did, I think. And I mentioned briefly that the American church took on a lot of what the Catholic Church had started, and the Orthodox Church had started. And a lot of that was seeing themselves in the holy as a way to draw people in. So like you see pictures and paintings of Jesus. Jesus wasn't white, dude. Like
he was a Jew.
He was Jewish.
They drew them on walls. We know what they look like.
Exactly. And so all of the descriptions of Jesus, even from the Bible, and I'll differentiate even from Scripture and the Bible, just because like if we want to use Scripture and say that's the Old Testament, I'm fine with that. So just the New Testament descriptions of what Jesus looked like was not handsome, was not significant of stature, like
was not tall.
Yeah,
This is what Jesus was. Jesus was the opposite of Saul. So any characteristic you think you have of Saul, who is supposed to be the man, the people's choice, right? He was the opposite. That's Jesus. He went to Egypt to hide. You can't be a 6-foot white dude with blue eyes. You can't.
You're not going to be able to. And so
can't be James Bond.
Yeah.
They're going to point out the black guy every time.
Right.
Every time. Right. It's the black guy around all the white people in England.
Yeah. That's funny. Anyway, so yeah, the point being is that I think that a response would be, if you're of a different faith and you would say, I think we should see ourselves as small g gods, to again reframe our mindsets about what we've been told that we are, reimagine what it is that we could be, and live forth into that thing. They talked about calling and stuff, and we don't need to get all into that, but like I thought that was really interesting stuff and really interesting to listen to stuff. So like there's a lot of that conversation. The reason I was bringing up the white Jesus comment is because if you look around, it looks like that Christianity was built for white people. Because if you look around, it looks like oh, Jesus, like they literally took him and made him white. Like, so Christianity must be built for white people. And Christianity, people in the name of Christianity, I can't even say if their heart was in it and that they're actual Christ followers, but I doubt it. Were very oppressive in their own ways, right? Very, very oppressive. So I feel like,
and Christians have been oppressive for a very long time.
Absolutely.
Like, a lot of the trouble in the Middle East is because of the Crusades, which are centuries ago, which is also around the time we got white Jesus.
Exactly right. Yeah, which, by the way, I saw a History Channel show on that one time. The guy who wanted to be drawn as Jesus that most of the current white Jesus is based on, dude was a scumbag. So just FYI, maybe take down some of those pictures. I don't know. So last question. I'll get off that part of it. But what do you think should happen? So CBS Viacom fires Nick. Fox keeps him hired. I'm not even really talking about the legal aspects of it, though, because we live in like such a cancel culture. Like, should we get rid of him? Should we not? There's about equal numbers of both of those comments on Twitter. As far as what I could see. What do you think? What should we do with these kind of discussions?
I think one of the first things that has to happen is we have to stop overreacting. Not overreacting. We have to stop pre-reacting. I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, we need to stop looking at the first instance of something we think is bad and immediately label it, right? So for instance, oftentimes we see like a black guy. This is real life in the news. There were 4 black kids who broke into this old lady's house. She was an old white lady. And they beat the brakes off to this lady, Jay. Like they beat her, they burned this woman, they took her money, and immediately everybody was like, racism. This was racism. They're all racist, and black people are evil, and all this other garbage group. That was just how it was in the news and the media, everything. And then the grandson of the lady who passed away, came out and said, these people are not racist at all. This was solely just a crime. Like he's like it doesn't excuse what they did, but he says there wasn't anything about this that was racial. It just so happened my grandmother was rich and she was paying them to do jobs, and so they knew how much money she had. And so not everything is racist, right? But that's not really the point of it. The point is we shouldn't be so quick to judge these kind of reactions. We need to ask questions. We need to stop. We need to say, that hurt. Why did that hurt? And were they really trying to hurt me? Right? I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. I think the second thing that needs to happen is we got to stop playing I'm more of a victim than you. We do that so much. Like, you can't go a single day without the Jews and the blacks going, I was more oppressed. It's like 12 million deaths, 400 years of slavery. You got reparations, we didn't. Yeah, but we're still being persecuted today. You're anti-Semite. Like, we have to, like, we can't do that. And then not just blacks and Jews, but like Asian community, white people are complaining about affirmative action, which like 9 states have canceled. And here's the stat. If we're just being honest, if we're just being truthful, white women benefit the most from affirmative action. It has been proven in court multiple times. Just gotta throw that out there. So we can complain about things all we want, but data shows otherwise. but people keep taking stuff at face value, and I think we have to stop. We have to stop taking things at face value, and we have to stop playing this game of who's got it worse.
Right.
I think if we stop doing those two things, we can start moving forward in life.
Yeah. By the way, several people, including Jordan and actually your wife, have mentioned that you're one of the smartest people they know. So there you go.
Oh, hey, Mom. Hey, Jordan.
But yeah, I'm on board with you on that. We live in this weird world where we sort of want to say that freedom of speech is an awesome thing, but then as soon as somebody says something we don't like, we're like, yeah, but you shouldn't be allowed to say that. It's kind of like, well,
yeah,
let's talk about why they shouldn't be allowed to say that. Maybe we should, like you and I, after we saw all this Nick Cannon stuff going on, we had a long conversation. It wasn't like, oh yeah, Nick Cannon's the worst or Nick Cannon's the best or whatever. Like you and I had a long conversation about all of the stuff that they were talking about and what we may or may not agree with in relation to what he was saying.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are just like, I'm just going to send a tweet. And then that's all the last time I have ever thought about it. Right. Like, and it seems to me like your point being is there's no way you can just assume that you know everything there is to know about it based on someone else's tweet, based on a 2-minute video out of a 2-hour conversation. And even in that 2-hour conversation, I wonder about this too. Like in that 2-hour conversation, what should people be allowed to say that's stupid, right? Like, and I don't mean stupid like I don't mean stupid like lack of intelligence. I mean stupid like you misstepped along the way and you said something that you didn't mean, right? Because clearly Nick Cannon and Griff are very knowledgeable people. So but that doesn't mean like I podcast all the time. I do YouTube videos all the time. Do I assume that every single sentence coming out of my mouth is going to be structured in such a way that it communicates all the meaning that I need to communicate? Like there's no chance that's going to happen. And I feel like too, like it would be better. I would like to see Nick go back on the show and converse with somebody. It seemed to me like the biggest offense that was being taken was amongst the Jewish community. Let's have him talk to somebody in the Jewish community for 2 hours. Yeah. Like let's have that conversation happen, right?
And somebody who wants to talk, not somebody who wants to complain.
Exactly.
Somebody who actually wants to talk.
Exactly. So that seems to me like the better way for us to handle all those like cancel culture stuff. It's like, why are we doing? And by the way, most of the time now these days, like you look at like, well, why is someone being canceled? You can't even find it anymore because there's so many tweets that are taking over, just trying to advertise whatever TikTok account they have. So
or because they're being canceled from something decades ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Kevin Hart getting canceled. Kevin Hart gets canceled every like 2 years. And past year, when he got canceled from the Oscars for like some homophobic tweets that he made a long time ago, he said, "I have apologized for these tweets every single year. I have apologized. I have gotten help. I have made shows about them. I've talked about them in my specials again. But you won't let them go."
Yeah.
He's like, "I've proven that that's not who I am and how I think today. But nothing I do at this point works for you guys." And so we gotta let stuff go, man.
So one more comment I'm gonna make, and then last question. Last comment I'll make is storytelling is fascinating to me because storytelling is the brain constructing answers to reasons why. That's what storytelling is. Like, just go read this book. I have it on my desk. Wired for Story. Human beings are wired for story, not data. And so human beings don't actually even like data that much. What we like is we like to see a story. And we like to see answers as to why something is occurring. That's what a story is. A story is basically a systematic process of answering why things are the way that they are. And I think Nick and Griff talk a lot about those things, right? And they talk a lot about narratives, and they talk a lot about stories. Stories are really, really, really important. And as we're trying to communicate these things, I love the fact that we can talk about Black Panther in the context of what the world today looks like. So
Yeah.
last question for you. And I say this, I bring this up because this is technically a writing show. And so I wanted to point people to like, this is why these things are so interesting, because the messages that we communicate to one another and how we communicate those messages are really important. By the way, last comment on Nick too, like where is grace in all this conversation, right? Like cancel culture means there's literally no grace. And so I feel like there needs to be grace worked into the messaging. But give me a vision for how we should think about these issues. Give me a vision for how we should tell each other stories and how we should come to the table on whether or not somebody gets canceled or whatever. Like, how should we handle these things?
I talked to my wife about this because she's in the medical field, and so she sees all types of things every single day. And she sees different symptoms, different cases, different everything. But the one thing that all nurses ask their patients every single time they go in their room is, what is your name? When is your birthday? Not just to identify them and make sure they have the right person, right? But they want to learn about this person to see why they have these symptoms. You can't just go in treating every sneeze like it's the same. You can't go in treating every skin rash like it's the same. You can't go in and look at every piece of statistic or whatever and treat it the same. Right. You have to go in and not try to punish things or criminalize things. We tried that multiple times in the United States. We tried it with alcohol. It didn't work. We got alcohol out of it. We tried it with the war on drugs. That didn't work. All that did was create the biggest notorious gangs in the world. We tried it with what did we try it with? We tried it with or we go the opposite way, right? And we just allow everything, right? So we have to get into this place to where we're not criminalizing each other, and we're not just allowing everything. Because when you allow everything, you have to force people to not be so sensitive, and you can't do that. But when you criminalize everything, you have to tell people, don't be so harsh. And you can't do that. Some things are harsh. Jesus has some harsh statements. It's just a fact, right? So I think that's the real like, I don't even know how to say it. I think that's like how we should go about looking at these cancel culture things. Because here's the truth. Yeah. Everybody knows the golden rule, right? Love others as yourself. Treat others the way you want to be, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Right before that, Jesus straight up says, he's like, look, what does it credit you to talk to those who love you? Your enemies do that. What does it credit you to talk to those who love you? And then he says, the tax collector comes for your enemies just like he comes for you. He's like, God raises the sun and sets the sun for you and your enemies. So what are you doing just talking to people who think like you, dress like you, act like you? You have to go out and talk to your enemies. That's why it's so imperative to love others as you love yourself.
Yeah.
He didn't commandment. He told us why.
Yeah, and so I would go down the same path you were going down, which is why I think that Black Panther is so apropos. Because a lot of people could say, yeah, we should cancel Nick because he wasn't loving other people like he should be. But what's funny about that is that you just moved into criminalizing Nick's speech, like you just talked about. You went so far the other direction. If you loved all other people the way that you love yourself, how would you like to be treated if you were Nick? So you can't just apply a law to this kind of situation in my mind. You've got to go reach out to Nick and be like, hey, Nick, like, let's have a conversation about this because I love you just as much as I love myself. And if I were in your shoes, I would want people to reach out to me, not to say you said everything great and you're good to go, don't worry about it, but rather to say, what would you like to clarify? Like, what are you listening back on that conversation? Like, what are some of the things that you said that maybe it may have been taken out of context, or maybe that you said that you didn't mean the way that they came out? And then you would get a chance. You would want that chance. Wouldn't you want that chance? I would want that chance. So to me, I feel like that's the bigger picture of like, love others the way you love yourself isn't just, well, that person's not being loving, so we can't love them anymore. Like, no, you gotta love the people that are maybe in the wrong, love the people who are in the right. Like, you gotta love everybody at that point. And that makes it so hard.
When Jesus said, take care of the poor, take in the widows, he didn't say take in the widows who didn't cheat. He didn't say don't take in the widows who killed their husband. Right. He said take all of them in. Right. And I think one quick thing to add about like the way the US works is we've established this idea that we're supposed to go by, that you're innocent until proven guilty. So even today, if you go to a precinct and you tell them, I just killed a man, and you bring evidence, they're going to arrest you, and you're going to get a court date. And you're going to have your day in court. Even if you plead guilty, there still is going to have to be a hearing.
Right.
And so I think when you look at, just to circle it all the way back to Black Panther, and you look at that throne room scene where Killmonger first comes to the throne room for the very first time, and he starts talking and going on, and Black Panther says, take him away. He didn't even want to hear what he had to say. He's like, I know who this dude is, and he's probably going to be really problematic, so just take him away. Don't tell me his real name. Don't tell me what I already know. Just take him away. And we saw Wakanda literally fall because he did not want to listen to Killmonger. He didn't want to hear it. There was so much foreshadowing in that movie. From the very moment when T'Challa and what's his name's character were just sitting on the line, and he was like, when you get the chance to bring Claw, bring him to me, because he killed my dad. And T'Challa is like, we're not operating like that. I can't do that. Because he's willing to listen to his friend. He's willing to listen to those who love him. He's willing to listen to those who pose no threat. But when it comes to Killmonger, nah, leave the throne room. Even God listens to Satan when he came to visit him in Job. So I think we got to do a good job of, like you said, just listening to your enemies, not chastising or being mean to each other. We literally have to listen. We have to hear them. Because it doesn't do any good to only listen to people who love us.
Totally agree.
You want to talk about the best in the MCU? It's definitely Black Panther.
Yeah. Black Panther is awesome. So when it comes down to it, I don't think, and I'm gonna let you have the last word on this, and then we'll close out the podcast. I don't think that Nick Cannon went full Killmonger, because I don't think that Nick Cannon meant to say that that melanated people, using his terms, should oppress non-melanated people. I don't think he meant to say that. And I think that that's evident when you listen to the end of the latter part of the podcast. So I don't think you went full Killmonger. I think that if you were to take out that short segment of the show where he talks about what appears to be superiority, meaning if you have melanin in your skin, you're a superior. And if you don't have melanin in your skin, you're inferior and therefore evil and hateful. I think he was trying to talk about context. I think he was trying to talk about things that didn't sound right. And I think he could clarify that very easily. But what do you think? Does Nick Cannon qualify as Killmonger?
I don't think Nick Cannon qualifies as Killmonger. I think Nick Cannon qualifies as what's the other character in the movie?
Which one?
The colonial guy. The colonial guy, whatever his name. No. The good white guy.
Yeah. The one that yeah. I know who you're talking about. I don't know what his name is.
The CSI agent, the CIA agent.
Yeah.
He came into this movie with an agenda. And his agenda in this movie was to advance the mission of American relations. That's what his job is to do, right? His job was to make a deal with Claw, catch him in the act, get the bad guy, also get some vibranium, and not make too much of a mess, and just to be honest in who he was, and that's it, right? I think Nick sees that. He sees a lot of things that can go wrong. He sees a lot of things that are wrong, and he thinks that there are people on his side, and he thinks that there's a lot of ideas that are on his side. But in reality, there are always secret Killmongers who are triple agents.
Mm.
There are always people who are actually against you. There are also people who have the same mission as you, but in a very different way of carrying it out. And I think that's who Nick really was. And just listening to the whole podcast, because he's like, I want to help Black people, and I want to do the good thing. And I want white people to understand that we're not all evil. And I also want higher power people, that boogeyman that exists, to not be in control anymore, right?
Yeah.
But he ran into a bunch of people who was almost every other character in the Black Panther movie. In my head, he's just like the CIA agent. That's just how I view it. What is that?
I like that.
Name?
I don't know what that dude's name is.
I'll look it up later.
Yeah, we'll have to go look it up, or somebody in the comments can let us know. So where can people find you if people wanna converse with you on Twitter or wherever? Where can people find Montrell Thigpen?
You can find me on Twitter at MOT427. It's my initials and birthday. That's probably the best place, the easiest place to find me and reach me. Don't follow my wife and berate her with weird questions. Please don't do that, because some people are weird.
Yeah, people are weird.
That's probably the easiest way. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So now also we wanted Montrell and I would like to hear your thoughts. So please, what's your vision? What's the vision that we should have here? Monty and I have painted sort of a vision of what we think it could be, but what do you think the vision should be, and why is that vision important for us to achieve? Who from Black Panther has the right perspective on what this looks like? Let us know. Leave us a comment. And if you want more details on the process of writing and producing your own science fiction and fantasy stories, definitely subscribe to this channel. I'll fill you in on all of the details that I have gone through in writing my own stories and producing my own stories, and then you can apply those same things to your own stories. So if you like this video, hit that like button for us, and we will see you on a future video. Bye, everybody.
Peace out.